Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you are in. I hope you are in the best of your spirits and you are keeping safe. My name is Noman Nasrullah, and here we are with yet another episode of Bizverds. Bizverds, as you know, is our attempt to bring the industry experts, specialists, and gain insights and ideas from them. Today, the topic that we are about to discuss is very, very close to my heart. It's about the new face of HR, the future of HR, how HR will evolve. And we have two very, very seasoned HR professionals with us. I have Rahim joining us from Dubai, and we have Shehzad joining us from far, far away in New Zealand. Shehzad, thank you for making yourself available. I believe it's very late in the night for you right now. And I hope you are high on coffee and you are not sleepy. So,
Yeah, thank you.
without more ado, Shehzad and Raim, I would leave the introduction to you. So, if you can share about yourself a little bit for our audiences, for them to know who you are, what you do, and then we'll get on with our episode. So, Raim, why don't you go first?
All right, I was just about to say that Shehzad is a bit lucky with being high on coffee and being close to night, so he can really get away with saying anything that he wants. We just need to be extra careful and be mindful of the fact that most of us are and would be fasting. So, hi
I'll
everyone.
be mindful.
uh, Thank you for bringing me on, Noman. I think it's a great opportunity to be able to come live. We ourselves have been running a few sessions in our organization where we are getting an opportunity to go live and talk to our people. I think that's one of the most important aspects at this point during the pandemic. With people being isolated and being away from their families, it's just the fact that you stay connected and come close by showing yourselves to them. But I'll get into the gear of introducing myself. So my name is Rahim, as all of you know. I'm currently the HR manager for a company called Switzer. It's part of the MES group, a group that I've belonged to for over 14 years now. I started my career back in my home country in Pakistan with MESC. Prior to that, I've done a couple of years in the banking industry, and then I moved to MESC. It has been a roller coaster ride for me from the word go, with having different opportunities to go around in different functions and also exploring quite a number of geographies. So, in my stint, I've spent some time for about a year and a half in Sri Lanka. Then, back in 2014 is when I got the opportunity to change the role and come into a regional role and came to Dubai. It was supposed to be a Dubai, but Dubai was just a camp for me where I would normally come in like on holidays, but would be moving around. So I did some short stints in South Africa in Durban. So that was a great opportunity. Apart from it, I've spent some time in Kenya as well. Plus, this was back in 2016. Did that for about 7 months, shuttling between Nairobi and Dubai. And then later, I also got an opportunity to do a short stint in Senegal, which was a life changing experience with it being a francophone country and not knowing a word of French and still being able to take on the role of head of HR in the interim and trying to communicate as much as possible. So that was something that helped me a lot in terms of my maturity. And then later took on a learning and development role, something I'm very passionate about. Initially used to be scared of it, but as I went along with the flow and how things happened for me, I just have fallen in love with it. To say the most. And right now, then later things changed, things keep on evolving, and that's one of the experiences that I have in life. The opportunity wanted to take me back to Pakistan, but unfortunately, due to some family reasons, I could not relocate back to Pakistan. Decided to stay back in Dubai and then moved into Switzerland. So here I am. I've done almost 8 months in Switzerland now, which is a sister concern to MES Group, and it's part of a marine or let's say a towage industry for all the people to know. And I look after the portfolio of Asia and Africa, a bit of Middle East, but primarily responsible for these geographies. Thank you. Over to you, Shehzad.
Great. Thank you, Raim. That was very, very in-depth introduction, and I think you've been all around places where we where, and I think when you were talking about the travel, I was just thinking about Corona, and I used to travel a lot, and here I am in Dubai, not moved a single inch for the past 3 months now. So yeah, interesting, and yeah, travel teaches you a lot. So
Yeah.
great. And you're in an industry which is also on the front lines, the logistics. You're keeping the things moving. Great. We'll go into the details of that in a short while. Shehzad, over to you. Can you introduce yourself to us? Shehzad, sorry, before you go ahead, I'm getting the introductions from our guests, but all those friends who are live, please drop in your name, where you're from, in the comments box. We will soon be taking questions also from you. So do type in your name, where you're from, say hi to us, and we'll say hi back to you. Shehzad.
So, Noman, thank you so much. And I hope you and your listeners, wherever they are safe, first of all. So, I would like to introduce myself as a HR professional, uh, fortunate enough to work in local, international, and regional roles across blue chip companies like Fonterra, which is the largest dairy exporter, Reckitt Benckiser previously, and Chevron before that, in a variety of roles across South Asia, Middle East, Africa, Europe, in Asia Pacific, and now a global role. Leading business transformation, cultural transformations, and being at the front end of growth, managing talent, and at the same time, a lot of times it's the cultural transformation also asks you, business transformation also asks you to cut costs and all that. So I have been on the forefront for that. Very passionate about today's topic, as well as leading analytics in people domain, as well as future of work and the agility and the new structures. I've worked on that in a few of our markets as well. So happy to be here and share my experience and learn from you guys as well. So thank you so much for having me here.
Great. Thank you, Shehzad. I think you were very humble about your experience, having worked with you as a partner. I would say I hate using the word vendor, but when you were in Dubai in Fonterra, it was an amazing experience. The interactions that we used to have with you, when me
Thank
and
you so
Farad were
much.
working with some interactions. So
Thank
yeah.
you so much.
Thank you guys for joining us. And we have quite a few people live joining us. I have Saib Karim Khan from Dublin. Saib is another HR professional. He is on a short sabbatical to Dublin doing his master's. We have Afsha from Pakistan. We have Shaina Jagrani from Khairpur. Shaina, again, is a very, very regular viewer. Guys, do drop in your name and where you're from, and we'll be saying hi to you, and just say hi to us. Great. So let's get on with our topic: the new face of HR, the future of HR, how HR is evolving. This virus that we could not even see has come in, and I think the most that it has challenged is HR professionals. And I also think the HR professionals are suddenly being taken very, very seriously by the business leads. I was recently having a talk with the CEO, and he said, three people are most important to me: my head of logistics, my HR, and my communications.
And no
Um,
fun.
so he said right now they're extremely important for me, because this is a company which is on the front lines. They're in media. I cannot share the name right now. But interestingly enough, HR suddenly becomes very, very important, as well as HR is also on I think on the crossroads of transformation. And before I come to you, Rahim and Shehzad, and get insights from you, I was going through a very, very interesting survey done by Gartner. And for my viewers, Gartner is an organization that does researches and surveys, and then collects a lot of data, and then use that data analysis to predict trends and help leaders to make the right decisions, and then stay ahead of the change curve. Um, they have done a similar survey recently, which is the long-term implications of COVID-19 and what's in it for HR. And it's an excellent document. I would really recommend all my viewers to go online, Google it, and search for it. However, I want to share two slides where they talk about how things are changing. And the first one is about the whole idea of remote work. Interestingly, remote work is the most talked about topic across the world right now, working from home or remote work. Interestingly, remote work was not something new, especially in the developed world. I think in the developing world, it was still something new. However, moving forward, so the survey says that there were around 30% people working remotely, some partially and some full time. Post the pandemic, we are looking at 42%, 48% people working remotely. Now, that changes a lot in terms of HR.
Did we just lose Noman?
I think so.
All right. I think the show must go on, like they normally say. Now, I think, Shehzad, when you were introducing yourself and you were quite humble about it, I felt being in a
I
spot
guess
where I was bragging a lot. She's back
Of
now.
course, I haven't traveled as much as you have,
I
for sure.
think I got somehow disconnected, and I'm back. You guys were live, so I hope you were not saying something which you shouldn't be saying.
No,
But
no, we just tried to keep the viewers entertained a little bit.
thank you very much for that. Yeah. So I was sharing about the slide where they talk about how remote work from 30% increases all the way up to 48% post-pandemic. So this is a reality which is here to stay. You like it or you don't like it, it is here to stay, and it changes a lot. It changes the skill sets. It changes the employee experience. It changes how the managers deal with people. It even changes, I think, each and everything of the employee cycle as HR professionals. It changes performance management. It changes a lot of things, right? So and then that's one part of the data that they've collected. There's a lot of other things which is part of that study, and I wanted to share it with my viewers. I'll put a link later on in the comments. So Shehzad, let me speak to you. I guess you guys are one of those countries which would make the earliest shift back to work. We are fingers crossed. Yeah, you're still in I think level 2 or level 3 or
No,
review
level
2.
three now, moving to level two, and I think the government has done a tremendous job here.
Right.
Again, the small country, 4.5 million people versus other countries which are there, plus a country which is an island, so the import is only through or travel coming into the country. So I think it has worked for New Zealand. But I think businesses are still cautious. So, a lot of good businesses or have still told the employees, look, continue working from home as long as you want and adjust accordingly. So there's a lot of understanding, which is very appreciative. I think, of course, the SME sector is the most impacted, which would still want people to go back to work earlier. But I think what I've observed in in shops and just observing people around that, they have taken a lot of care and have responded well to the government's call. So I think it's something which the blueprint is ready for other countries to follow.
Right. Yeah. So how have you sailed through this challenge, and how do you see HR evolving beyond the COVID pandemic?
I think, as so much we do as HR is connected to people and behaviors. And one thing this pandemic is telling us for sure is that there will be change in behaviors. And looking back in history, SARS pandemic was often credited for Chinese consumer to move towards e-commerce and online shopping. So I think this will also leave its impact, and I think HR will play a role in it to guide the organizations through it. Having said that, there are still a lot of unknowns here as we speak. Remember, our response has been a crisis response. Okay, so crisis response is different from a BAU response. Okay,
Yeah.
and BAU performance. So that will change as well. The impact will also not be uniform, and different industries, different countries, geographies would see different, depending on where they are and what point they are in. But there are some trends which are developing, which can be helpful for HR people to think through it and evolve. If I may answer that. Particularly on 4 key areas, if I have to pick. One is strategy. So a lot of companies are going back to the drawing board and revisiting their strategy. So where HR will play a role in, because now a lot of companies are talking about resilience, right? That, oh, okay, fine. If this is happening and there are 1.7 million more viruses, how we will survive that? So I think that will be there, and that's where resilience would come and HR would come on in playing a role. There will be acceleration in terms of adaptation of technology, and again, that implementation, of course, would be, as far as the people side is concerned, we'll be responsible for it. I also feel, again, from a global perspective, there will be a lot of anti-globalization as well. A lot of countries which are export countries, particularly like New Zealand, would focus on domestic markets and value the domestic markets more. Again, import-driven countries like Dubai would focus on, if they could locally produce a lot of stuff. So I think that would also change the structure of the business and everything. New business models would evolve as well, where when we talk about structure and people side, I think from a perspective of, like, for example, our food services business is totally closed now because of out of home hotels, restaurants and catering. It's not being supplied. But what we are doing is selling those products or those SKUs in consumer channels now. So, so the organization structure needs to be adjusted around that as well. Work from home is another one which would come up as well. Agile structures would evolve. So I think there's a lot of things which we would need to do. There's work which was being done on reskilling people, which would be there. Work from home was not something new for, at least in developed markets. Hot desking was there, but at a scale which we are experiencing today is phenomenal, and it was never done there. So I think I feel that there, as you mentioned earlier, right, there will be a lot of focus given to us, which was always there, of course. But capabilities is the other one. Digital leadership capabilities would be fast tracked, and a lot of questions would be asked of HR in terms of how to gauge the performance while in the remote world, and KPIs around that. So I'm pretty excited still. Of course, there is a risk which is there. But keeping that in mind, I think from culture to policies, there's a big role to play.
And Shehzad, you did mention about anti-globalization probably becoming the new part of the new normal also. However, being a global GM, and I think Fonterra has operations in many countries. Sadly, you guys have not reached Pakistan as yet. You were in Sri Lanka and Dubai, where 3 of our offices are. You're not in Pakistan. But being a global GM, how do you see the whole idea of working from home and remote shaping talent acquisition, and how HR plays a role in that?
So I think the response is very different from market to market as well when we talk about it, right? So look, it's easy to adjust in a developed country, Europe, New Zealand, Australia. It is so difficult in Ethiopia. We are still struggling with basic internet connection there, right? So it depends. So the response depends around that as well, where how to adjust accordingly depending on the infrastructure support which is available. As far as you asked about talent acquisition particularly, right?
Yeah.
So look, at the moment it's still freeze, right? So when we go to the new normal, that's where we'll talk about it. And before that, we'll for sure check our balance sheets, that how much we can afford as well. But I think at least what we are grateful is that we are in a business which is a food dairy business. At least there are some industries which have been unfortunately impacted very severely. So I think that's something which in our employees, I have started feeling that empathy, that that they're grateful that they have retained their jobs. And I think that's a great feeling in terms of when people are doing the self-check. And so I think that is something which is important. I think talent acquisition, of course, there were always softwares which were available for video conferencing, other stuff. Unilever uses a really good model in terms of assessing talent and their tests and everything, which would still continue. I think there would be a lot of digital focus and digital, if the question comes up, I can happy to take it. But sure, there will be a lot of focus around that as well.
Yeah, and I think maybe we'll discuss it a little bit later after I come back, getting Rahim's views. But I think what I meant was more in terms of the availability of talent does not requires you to be physically in one place. That whole notion is suddenly being challenged. So we'll come back to that.
Sure.
But let's hear from Rahim. Rahim, how do you think HR has evolved and or is going to evolve beyond the
Hmm.
COVID pandemic?
I think when you actually came up with this topic about the new face of HR, I actually started thinking about myself, the transformation that I've been through, losing a few kgs.
You are
So,
the face, right?
so I come with
I'm
a
just
new
here.
face. No, I sorry, missed you, Shehzad. Say that again.
It's okay. Go ahead.
No,
I was
I'm
just
just saying
joking.
that I actually come with a new face of HR. So I hope that's a good one uh, in physical sense. But what Shehzad said, I think I'm going to echo quite a lot of it in the sense that he's not left a lot of room for me to add, and I don't want the repetition to come in. I think he's well rounded in terms of his thought process. But I think one thing that will definitely change, and it does not necessarily have to be for HR, is for all the people. I think one thing that we need to take a pause on and you know find an opportunity is to do a bit of a self-reflection. It really does not matter in which part of the function or the business you're in. This is one great opportunity where you can actually introspect and see what are some of the skills or things that you would like to work on. I think all of us are so busy and tied up with what we hear on the media, on the news, with the COVID cases increasing, with the lockdowns, and this pandemic not having an end, and probably we not even having the vaccinations by the end of the year. It just adds to our misery in terms of our mental health. I think one thing we need to definitely do as human beings and as HR professionals is to do a bit of an introspection. So take a bit of a pause in life, and that's something which applies to all people across the board. Just take a pause, see what is important for you, how life is. Try kind of sitting down and reflect on how it is working out with the family, because this could become the new norm. Like what Shehzad pointed out, and you rightly said with the surveys coming on Gartner, that remote working is here to stay. This is something which will definitely not change. And with this whole thing coming up of remote working, what would be more important for HR professionals is to have that connect. And one thing that we have always been taught as HR partners or HR colleagues is our ability to have the hand on the pulse. So there will be more stress on us to be able to gauge and collect that information. So when you necessarily don't have everyone present, busy in their own lives, and practically not in front of you face to face, how do you really gauge all this kind of information? So I think it's important that we as HR professionals stay tuned to what is happening in the business, because as much as it is important for the people to know, it is more important for you to know, because for the people it's important that they stay and feel connected. So that is one thing that I think is going to take a lot of importance. Second is the engagement. I think one thing that we all sit and judge a lot of times when in organization, and especially in MNCs, and this is the new buzzword that has come up with employee engagement. I think it just becomes a lot more important at this stage, because what will happen is that it will have direct impact on the productivity in terms of how the employees are taking this whole entire situation. I can give you our own example also for that matter. We last few years back moved on as MESC onto Gallup engagement survey tool. We were doing it once in a year, and this year was the time when we decided. This was before the pandemic had come in. We had decided that we will have two Gallup surveys happening in the year. We were questioned on when this whole situation was going through on the fact that why are we doing an engagement survey at this point in time when the life is so really miserable with all these things? What are you really going to get at with finding results? And the survey would come out to be completely not in our favor. I think
Hmm.
it's more so important to have that sort of a pulse check, to see the efforts that have been put in by the organizations in terms of remote working. Because yes, we talk about remote working, but it would have been so much easier if we would have known that remote working is coming, and we would have built that capabilities with the leaders, with the employees, to be
Mm.
able to see, this is how remote working really works. But we were left in a situation, and now we're like, all right, let everybody go back home and start working. So we really did not in a way kind of build that capacity and capability. So I think from that standpoint, engagement becomes a lot more important. And I think one more thing that will become the new norm is the employee well-being. I think the employee well-being is something that a lot of organizations have all of a sudden started to reflect on a lot more. The employee assistance programs become a lot more, uh, you can say, need of the hour, because with isolation, with lack of social interactions, and with this whole social distancing norm, people are going to be in a very difficult spot. Imagine if we take us as the expatriates, and even for that matter, for Shehzad being in New Zealand, it is so difficult that we are away from our families. And when we talk about isolation, at least I'm quite self-contented with my wife and two kids to be around me. But imagine the people who are away from families and are not necessarily with their families here, who are in isolation, cordon off, and have no way to connect. I think it just builds on the pressure on people's mental health. So I think employee well-being would be another parallel that will be drawn for HR to be able to highlight and make sure that it gets a good level of representation in the organization, so that everyone sees how that can really add value. And
Right.
I think this will in a way start building the new face of HR in terms of where exactly can we come in and add value in the overall organization. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think HR was always about people and processes. Though we are grappling with putting the new processes in place right now, because as you rightly mentioned, the learning curve was so steep. We had no
Hmm.
chance to try anything, and this is where the whole idea of agility came in. Where there were
Yeah.
times, and I'll probably say it in Urdu, वो कहता था कि जी बैठते हैं, मीटिंग करते हैं, डिसाइड करते हैं कि क्या करना है, या तो
Yeah.
टाइम ही नहीं था कुछ डिसाइड करने का, right? So you have to just get into action.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what, before the screen somehow went away. The second slide that I was actually sharing was about the implications of remote work increase, and it talks about how digital skills and competencies, which in a way we have taken for granted. Also, a lot of people had to really adjust to first come on Zoom, and also the basic ideas of having their videos on or not on. Then the whole idea of leadership, current and future, and then how they are managing remote teams currently, and how they would manage future teams, and employee experience, which is my next question to you, and also performance management, and then lastly, recruiting. So the interesting thing that their analysis says, which is organizations will start considering ability to work remotely when hiring. Digital dexterity will be more important. Organization will also be able to widen the talent markets they consider when recruiting, and this is one of the things that I was mentioning. But
True.
so I think we'll go through this. But if we look at it, we are actually looking at the whole employee experience being recrafted. As you mentioned rightly so, Rahim, that it's not just the office, but it is also at home. And Shehzad talk about how HR is now being integrated more and more with business strategy moving on. So the employee experience certainly widens up. It's beyond the tangibles and the intangibles in terms of touch points. It's beyond work, and the home suddenly gets involved also with remote. So let me start with Shehzad. How, as an global HR leader, would you be recrafting the employee experience, or how do you see organizations and HR recrafting this employee experience post the pandemic?
I think, look, the organization would need to still leverage on their strengths, right? What has worked for them, and evaluate themselves across, let's say, three big dimensions, right? One is, of course, the technology support that is there or not, and then the work and the work processes. So, work from home, or how the decisions would be made and all that. And then the social connection, right? Where you were talking about taking it back to home and all that. So how, are people feeling in isolation and everything. And when you look at an employee experience, how is an employee experience defined, right? It is one is the emotional connect, where the empathy plays a role, or you listening to the employees play a role in it. So leaders need to be more trusting as well, and so that's emotional is one connect. Then there is the the experiential connection, right? Where you talked about careers being built around digital, and also Rahim talked about the well-being side of it. That's the other one. And the third, which is the basic one, is the contractual obligations or contractual dimension, where our Daniel Pink motivation 1.0, where you are providing a salary and giving a reward. That's basic, which would need to be there. And I think from that perspective, people are still grateful that yes, some in the industries where they are not impacted, that they are secured their jobs and everything, and what they need to do is continue proving their value to the organization and build on that experience. As far as our side is concerned, what we need to do to know, Rahim talked about the pulse of the organization and how to craft that employee experience. I think we need to put in a lot of effort. Look, everybody is facing the same scenario with the pandemic, right? But we need to put in a lot of efforts to hear those stories, right? And drive loyalty through it. I quite value that in an organization where you learn, hear those stories, build organizational resilience through those stories. And even if your organization is facing the brunt in some industries, then face it and communicate through that. That is still an experience which you will be building for future as well. So I think communicating short, mid-term, long-term goals, you would see Emirates doing that. Qatar Airways has sent out emails and other stuff as well. So I think that would also play a role in building the overall employee experience.
Great. So some of our people who are online, they're asking, would we have a question and answer round? We would definitely have a question and answer round in a short while. Shehzad, we have a fan following for you. We have Tamina who says, hey, Shehzad, good to see you here.
Thank you.
So Shehzad says hi back. Rahim, how do you see, in terms of employee experience, being recrafted, and which directions are we heading into? And as Shehzad said, it is more about listening. It's about HR's role, which was always there to help the leaders, build that empathy. But how do you see HR's role becoming more and more important in building that empathy within the organization, and also for how the organization deals with the external world?
Yeah, I think I'll start it from the point of talent acquisition a little bit. I think a lot of us come from a background or a culture where the hiring and talent acquisition decisions are based and made on the pedigree, the university that you necessarily come from. I think that is going to change quite a bit in the new formation. People are going to be hired for skills specifically. Because that's one place there's going to be a lot more concentration on how much do you know and what are your current level of skills. So gone would be the days when you would come and say that I come from an X university, or I've actually spent this much time in learning this and all that. I think people are going to be left in a bit of a spot where skills are going to take over in terms of the talent acquisition. When I say and talk about talent acquisition, it then becomes a lot more important, because then it also in a way transforms the way the potential employee sees the organization. So when somebody would like to look for an opportunity, what they will start looking at is the fact that what does this company have to offer, and a lot of it would come from the the capability building aspect. I think reskilling is a place or a spot that would be very close to the CEOs and even the business leaders. I think you would see a lot more investment, and that means there's going to be a lot more money coming in for you, Noman, if you guys are on the right tangent with that, because I think not all the organizations across the world have that level of bench strength on the learning and development front, because that's going to be the new norm. And for a lot of new colleagues, or for that matter, new people looking to join organizations, would start to look at their experience post joining the organization, where the organization is able to promise them how are they going to build their skill, what are the career trajectory, and different level of career propositions that would be offered. Having said that, employee well-being also comes into the picture. So people will start looking at how much of flexibility does the organization is willing to offer, right? So the flexibility will become another norm, where working from home is just part of the regular culture. And when we talk about employee experience, I think one of the most important aspects would be that how do organizations really transform them in terms of the experiences they give to the employees. So one example is, I think I read it somewhere, where Walmart right now is partnering with an organization called Striver, who are into virtual reality, where normally what happens is, Black Friday is something that they cannot create, right? For the people to learn. So they have created a virtual reality where they would be presented or put in a spot or a situation where they would be shown that this is how Black Friday works and this is how you actually interact with customers. So imagine the level of investment that would go into the learning and development front. There's going to be a lot more concentration coming on the gamification of the learnings, and also from a standpoint where it will also shift the learning industry quite a bit from whole 9 to 5 experience to maybe short bite-sized learning experiences on different levels, which has already started to happen in a lot of organizations. So these will then structurally form, so we normally call it the building blocks in an organization in terms of the employee experiences. So these building blocks have been scattered for a long time in different places, but with this pandemic now coming in, that has given a lot of time for organizations to rethink and consider, all right, maybe this is what we need to really start working towards. Because was one thing which Shehzad mentioned was this: we were into the damage control mode. Now I think a lot of organizations have started to think, what would the world look like once they start coming back?
Right.
So
Yeah.
employee experience in itself will become something which is very important.
Mm.
And even when the organizations start to shift their employee experiences from their traditional systems and softwares, they would like to make it such that they are a lot more interactive. They give them a lot more insight in terms of the data mining and everything. And in a way, they can do all the groundwork, which can say, you crunch the numbers, but the HR professionals, the leaders, and the new industry or the people, the skill that would be required is you being a problem solver. So there will be someone who will give you the data and crunch it for you, but what solutions you bring onto the table, and employee experience from that aspect would also come into picture, with us saying, all right, if we as employees join this organization, what does this organization have an offer for me and even for the current workforce? So how do we necessarily make the talent available across? Do we have that visibility with our current systems? A question mark. And then that's a question mark for a lot of organizations to think about and say, is our current systems actually, in terms of employee experience, giving us what is required? I think it will
Right.
leave us with a bit of a awe situation. Yeah.
Great. I think these are some great insights, from building empathy to having transparency. I think organizations are also becoming more and more transparent with data, to virtual reality and artificial intelligence, and also how learning and development is changing. That's actually one of our future Bizverds on how L&D is changing. But you rightly said, Rahim, our world has suddenly changed. There was literally a collapse, and then a sudden rebuild. I'm sitting on my desk and running workshops in Pakistan and in Saudi. It's a completely different ball game right now. People who are online, who are viewing this, I think if you can share one thing that has changed, especially if you're HR professionals, do share one thing that you foresee as changing or has changed other than remote work, because that's one thing that we are already talking about and everybody knows about it. But what do you think would change in terms of employee experience? Shehzad, let me put up, as my colleague Farhad, and I think he just recently came online. He dropped in a comment, says a flip thought to it. On one hand, Rahim is talking about how the employees would be looking at the organization, but on the other hand, lots and lots of people are either made redundant or they are on the verge of being made redundant. There's a lot of fear. And I do understand that we are in the crisis, but the minute we go beyond this crisis, how, as HR professionals, do you see managing this fear, and how do you see it presenting? What are the challenges that it presents, and how do we cope with it?
Look, as you both highlighted, right? This is at the moment, it is a crisis response mode. That's phase one. We will go to phase two, which will be our gradual reopening mode, and then only will lead to a new norm. Okay. Our response, our behaviors will be very different. Now we have a lot of fear because there is a pandemic surrounding and everything. But as it goes by, there will be change in behaviors. People will adjust that down as well. Today, we see a lot of empathy as well. People feel nervous about their jobs are at stake. We could be next as well. So people have those kind of feelings. But by the time it's a new norm, we have to wait and watch. People might not have that much empathy as well, right? So that's there. People, you talked about remote working. People were fascinated about remote working or working from home. I personally feel over the last week or so that romanticization is disappearing, right? So people realize it is hard when you do it indefinitely. We have been in lockdown 8 weeks. We've been doing it. So I see that there will be some balance which would come out of it. Even people would ask questions. You highlighted, right? People would ask questions about why should I move, right? I work without tax free in Dubai. Why should I move to New Zealand? Paid 40% tax, 30% tax. So I think all these permutation combination. I mean, one employee asked me about, has a difficulty in the family with a difficult, some issues there. Why should we move and work remotely? So those would become new realities and everything. So I think the fear would subsidize in the longer run as people we go towards that. Again, it will balance it out as well. But again, some industries, of course, are being impacted really badly. So depending on industry to industry, the industries which have faced the cut, the media, the airline, the tourism travel industry, the live sports, they will feel that pain as we go further. And I think what they would need to do is, of course, look out for the other opportunities, and at the same time take this as an opportunity to reskill themselves. If you are an HR professional, then I can talk about. I don't know if you want me to answer that question, but I can talk about specific capabilities on what you can rework on them as well.
Yeah, that's exactly where we were coming to. But there are a few questions and a few comments. On screen, it says Akhtar Hania. I believe it's a friend of mine, as well as we've worked together as partners with them. Hina Akhtar from Aisha's team, because I read a comment earlier on. She says, I see now getting the best candidate will not be a challenge, but the same candidate not working for your competitor will also be a worry for the competitor. So it goes both ways around. Another friend and then another seasoned professional, Amin. I think Shehzad, you and Rahim, probably you might be knowing him also. Amin is in the forefront of digital transformation in a leading bank here in UAE. So important discussion for these times. But let's come to that. What are some of the skills, as if I'm a mid-tier HR professional or I'm a junior HR professional, and I'm looking at the world changing, and I want to stay ahead of the curve. What are some of the skills? What are some of the competence that I should be building? Or if I'm already on job, how am I transforming myself as an HR professional and taking it further? So Shehzad, capability, competence building as HR professionals in this new phase of HR.
So I think one prescription doesn't change. That HR people, wherever you are entering the business at whatever level you are, you need to understand the business. Okay, I have seen that's as a gap longer term. We understand, build your commercial acumen before COVID, between, after, that will not change, and that will only help you to contribute as a better thought partner to your businesses, your business MDs and leadership teams as well. So I think that is a competence which I would say that would continue, and please build on that. As far as more digital and more post-COVID, like coming into these terms, capabilities around that would be, I think a lot of work would now be done where HR or any professional, marketing, sales as well, would lead beyond edges. When I say that, is leading beyond their own function, leading beyond their own opco, leading beyond their own company as well, right? So co-creation and collaboration with partners, with other companies would become, I see that as a trend which would be coming in. I think when HR would talk to a lot of people, again, in COVID situation, and I talked about empathy, I talked about listening to stories, they will get a lot of insights as well. And I think that is one thing which is a skill set you need to build as well, talking to people, and that empathy as well. Those insights we should be able to translate and share with the business in terms to improve or innovate as well. So learn, learn dynamically as well. So I think that would be very, very important. Of course, you guys have highlighted like forming leading virtual teams would be important. Building trust online is another thing, right? So we communicate what 60-80% through bodies and our voice, maybe more than that, right? That would be a challenge. And how do you build that trust online now, because you don't see face to face? And I think we need to come up with those virtual equivalent of those interactions. I think that would be play a role. And the last skill set I would certainly advise all HR people to build is around analytics. I think, as we go forward, we are, as I see, I mean, a lot of our consumer business I'll talk about particularly, we are hyper aware about our consumers, their preferences, their choices, their behaviors, right? I think that would come into the HR domain as well, that we need to be aware about, hyper aware about our employees as well, their skill set. I mean, classic example, right? We didn't know. I mean, some of our employees which bubble they live in to track if they are exposed or not exposed. That was a basic information, right? Because a global organization, 20,000 people. So I think that is some reality which would hit a lot of people as well. So I think that domain, the analytics one, and your digital HR, your future age work would be quite important. Rahim, your thoughts, and then I can add a few more if you want.
I think you've again left me at a spot where there's not much to contribute, but I think from my standpoint, I would just like to say to come with a mindset which is flexible. I think one thing that we have learned and have been built is being very rigid in terms of our thoughts, in terms of accepting the new norms or how the conditions actually change around us. I think resilience is a word which Shehzad has mentioned a couple of times already. And I would just echo that, saying that resilience would actually show how much of depth you have as an HR professional. Because I think most of us would like to come back to the same old ways of working towards coming to the office and maybe following our daily routine. I think we need to adapt and change according to the situation. So flexibility will become a lot more important. Also from the commercial aspect of the business, I think staying as much close to the business is important. Understanding the numbers are important, but we should also start to look at the dynamics from the industry standpoint. So we should also look at how the competition is doing, what is happening in different parallel industries. We should also kind of have a knowledge and build on that, because I think the only thing that would help is you being a lot more knowledgeable and having an understanding of what is happening around you, rather than being very focused on internal thing, because that's what starts to happen, that we hear and see things from our own perspective of what is happening, let's say in the shipping industry, or let's say what is happening in FMCG. I think it would make a lot more sense that we start to broaden our horizon and domain a little bit with saying, all right, what is happening in different industries? How can I become a parallel? Because one thing that will come as a new norm and that I see, and I've actually spoken a lot about, is the complementary business. I think for a lot of people, what happens right now is that we are in a system or a place where you give me one thing and I'll give you another thing, and that's how we exchange and do activities. With this whole thing coming across, it would start to come that how can I help and assist by bringing value to the business. So in our case, the industry is evolving and the oil prices have really gone down. It means either I stick myself and say, all right, no, I'm not going to change the rates and I'm going to continue with the contract. The company might go bust in 2 years. So can I assist them by giving them a discount at this stage so that we can work and partner together? Similarly, HR will have to take that shift in terms of saying, how close can I come to the business? How much value can I really bring in by being closer to the business leader, and not just giving him a perspective of the organization and what he wants to listen, but also challenging quite a bit in terms of the status quo and saying, all right, no, this is not how it is being done in this industry, and this is how we have actually learned it. And I think one important thought also that comes, which I would like to share with the viewers, is I think there is going to be a paradigm shift in the working class also. So there was people who were active workers, there were people who were relaxed workers, and then there were people who were highly tension workers. I think that norm is going to shift a little bit with relaxed workers, or people who are laid back, or are not always on their toes, might find themselves struggling quite a bit. So I think it's time that everyone kind of takes that gear where they're in full steam ahead, and then kind of making sure that they're also reskilling themselves based on the ideas that Shehzad shared. Yeah, so I think that's a good thing to start with. Yeah,
I think I usually call them proactive, just
yeah.
active, and reactive. Yeah.
Okay.
So the proactive people were those who were on the go, and the reactives were relaxed. But when they get in our language, we say the danda, they didn't get all the stresses going on. I would keep this discussion. I would now open it up for questions. So all my viewers who are online, please put in your questions, and yes, we would take them on. Farhad is pretty active on comments right now, and he says, haha, yes, Rahim, our perception of performers and non-performers is also changing. uh, and that's exactly true. And earlier on, he commented saying that how Shehzad was right about the business acumen. And I think that's a challenge. As HR professionals, we always say it, that we need to be closer to the business. Rahim, you said challenge the status quo, challenge your leader. That's very, very rare. You would see an HR leader or an HR manager having, let me use a censored language and saying, having the guts to go and challenge the leader. Right. So that's again a challenge. Shehzad, you made an important point about design and about empathy, and how you could use empathy not just to drive from within, but even looking at externally what's coming through, and using that data. And I've been doing, me and Farhad both, we've been doing a lot of design thinking workshops these days, and I think one of the things that we've picked up is design thinking for HR professionals, and certainly innovation and HR, they've come together. HR used to talk about innovation, but sadly there was no innovation. So that's one thing that we're looking at. Amin makes a very important point over here. Voice of customers was always important. For customer facing organizations, how well that changed the role or the product itself is I think debatable, but it was always important. And now he says, I believe the voice of employees and the voice of process will gain momentum. What would you say about this, Shehzad? How do you think the voice of people matters, and matters not just on paper, matters not just in terms of transactions, but in terms of overall HR transformation?
Yeah, look, I think yes, it was. I mean, you see any good company structure, there was always that voice, which was very important, right? Ray mentioned about Gallup surveys. We do that. There is enough data to prove performance linked to engagement and all that. There's theories. There. I think lot of things. So I think that there is there, and good organizations would continue to build on that. But give an example. We have a full-fledged data scientist who works on like, we get around 50,000 comments, and they go through those comments, extracting verbatims, and in terms of what the trends are, and what what biases are, even up to that level. So I think that good organizations will always continue doing that. As far as hearing that voices is concerned, but at the same time, it's very important to improve on it as well, right? Just not a tick in a box survey or so. So I still feel that once this settles down, or we go to the new norm post that, then there will be again, because it's so many unknowns we are working with at this point in time, right? You can't compare the performance today to performance tomorrow. There will be people who would focus that would gain importance, as it is always.
All right. So a question comes from Akhtar Hania. I still feel this is Hina Akhtar, but I would go with the name which comes on the screen. Akhtar Hania. It says, how do we go about reviewing performance of an employee this year? Again, we're in a crisis mode. How do we review the performance? Empathy, yes, but process and performance, what do we do? Shehzad, you want to take this, and Rahim, I'll come to you quickly. So we'll go to a rapid fire of probably 3 or 4 questions. All the viewers, I see 25 viewers online right now. If you have questions about the news of HR, or about what as an HR person you should be doing, please share your questions in the comments. So yeah, over to you, Shehzad. How do we go about reviewing?
Look, the work intensity has definitely gone up, no doubt about it. But I think productivity, and I think that's the question, right? So productivity, measuring that productivity at a scale, and then of course evaluating performance. I think what will happen is, we will need to adapt to a lot of models like the IBM has done in the remote working, or the McKinsey's do remote working models, and they learn from those models and how they measure KPIs or how they measure performance as well. And a lot of times as managers, we need to take a back step and not be meticulous about checking in and out and what is it working or not working, and more in terms of performance and goals. Keep it that discussion. Delivery of results should take the front seat now. And I think, again, that trust needs to come in. Leaders need to trust that, yes, somebody is performing. When you have hired them, you have made a good hiring decision and somebody is performing. So I think that would take time. So we need to spend considerable time here building that, empathy and trust, and building a resilient organization. So that's my thoughts, a quick fire thought, actually.
Rahim, a quick fire. How do you measure performance this year?
I just have one word, dynamic. That is, make your performance management system dynamic. Sorry, I just faltered there. But the fact that what needs to change is that we review and constantly give feedback and stay connected with the employee.
Yeah.
I think that is going to be a lot more important because people will start having their own preconceived notions about performances and things and thoughts. So it's important that the leader connects, builds what the expectations are, and then reviews it basis that. I think the more simpler we keep it, yes, it becomes dynamic, but keep it simple as much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of organizations has already thrown it out, but with COVID, the bell curve gets a toss for sure.
The bell curve is also out, right? A lot of people, a lot of companies, we don't do.
Yeah, but you would be amazed to know that a lot of organizations still in US.
But Rahim is making a good point, right? That feedback needs to be now. I think with the new performance model, it needs to be regular feedback and performance rather than waiting to the year-end cycles. And I think that is still, if that is still going on, then we need to change and work on that first up.
Right. Yeah. Shehzad, you mentioned about learning from organizations like IBM and McKinsey's and then building organizational agility in. You've been talking a lot about design and organization design and using empathy. Let me bring it. What are few things that you've probably done in the past year, not just the crisis, to increase the organizational agility?
Look, I think I'll talk about reskilling. I think that's very important aspect from that side. So I don't know how much you know, but let's suppose Fonterra is a global dairy giant, is dependent on 14% of New Zealand's GDP is dependent on Fonterra. Wow. And there are factories which are in rural communities, and I think a lot of times government has come back to us asking that, hey, look, if you put robots in that factory, the whole rural area would collapse and the whole economy around that factory would collapse. So I think what we are working a lot is on reskilling people. Now, what we have done is partnered with, of course, universities as well as government institutions, helping for that funding and all that, and doing those dairy courses to bring them at a certain level from a rural community. And at the same time, supporting back the community. I think there's a very beautiful example. Of course, it takes 3 years for the program, and even if you are a university school, I think at grade 14 you can come in directly for a dairy diploma and go around that. I think that's year 13 or year 12 from that. So I think that is something a future-ready organization in terms of reskilling. The other work which we have done is, again, which Deloitte also has done separately, is matching what are transferable skills as well, right? So where a skill set was used and you can transfer into that. The other thing which we have done in our China business particularly is we have reviewed the 40 top decisions we make, and where are the bureaucracies, cut the bureaucracy through that, how we can make it much more faster, and where exactly the bottlenecks are. And that's, again, a beautiful, and again, of course, the agile organization has we have cut through the functional hierarchy, but moved through that as well. So I think those are 2 or 3 good examples in terms of that agility, and I can dig in deep, but I see that you have some time left, and maybe Rahim needs to answer something.
Rahim, you want to share something on organizational agility? I think I'll take another question now. As I said, interestingly, I think Farhad is just missing being on screen. Farhad, you want to join us live? That would be great. You're sending a lot of comments to us, but I think that Farhad has probably interacted with Shehzad after a long time, at least on screen, I guess. Farhad says Pantera is an amazing cooperative business. Hats off. This is based on
Thank
your
you.
comment, Shehzad, but rightly so, because interestingly enough, I was reading a lot of surveys and reports when we were doing about the new face of HR, and I was doing my own research, and this whole role of organizations in terms of the social security and the social net would probably also get redefined moving on beyond this pandemic. However, let me put another question over here. Ahmed Hassan says, will strategic HR change a lot after COVID-19? Will the same strategies remain relevant? If you know what I mean. I think we've spoken a lot about this, but Rahim, you want to take a quick rapid fire to this, and
Yeah.
maybe Ahmed, you can also go through the episode and then discuss. But how do you think strategic HR would change, or it would still remain the same?
I think it would be very specific to the organization and the industry that you operate in. One thing that will definitely come about is the businesses will start to think what makes a lot more sense. So the giants, they have already shifted, Walmart and Amazon on e-commerce a lot. That's just one example that we spoke about earlier. Also, I think that is what is going to be the new norm. So the business changing would have a direct impact on the HR strategy. And having said that, it would mean in a way that HR needs to start thinking from that direction a lot more than what it was doing before. So I would leave it at that. Yeah.
Right. All right. Interesting. So I think we'll take maybe one or two quick rapid fire questions. Farhad finally said he's going offline. Amin says that he agrees with Rahim, constant employee feedback. And I think Shehzad mentioned that also constant employee feedback would be very, very important.
Can I just add one thing, Noman?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So one thing I think from a voice of customer point of view is for the organizations that becomes a lot more important is now the gear and the shift towards solution oriented approach rather than the businesses having one product and saying this is what we sell. The businesses will have to think from a customer point of view where the solutions would be designed around based on what sort of a customer profile you have and then coming up with a solution. So a standard even in a learning and development industry would not work. So the standard reskilling might not work, but maybe asking organization what they really need and presenting it to them would really add value. So yeah, solution oriented approach is going to be the new norm a lot more now.
Right. So
I think
yeah,
mental health is a lot of. I've seen it has picked up a lot in this. People have talked about it and have held meetings and then asked viewpoints on that as well. So I think that an area. Plus, I think the impact it has on positive impact on climate change also will be a discussion. Questions will be asked to travel, and is it necessary to you highlighted Noman earlier, right? Is it necessary to be based at a certain location or move from that? So I think that would all form part of the culture and the core strategy on how we move talent and hire or reskill talent as well.
Have we lost Noman here somewhere? I think his screen has frozen.
Yeah, I think we are always 2 minutes over as well.
Yeah.
Should I
So
thank you?
yes, I think we'll just take that one question we see on the screen. Tell me about a time when we were overwhelmed by a workload and how we overcame it. How about I ask this question to you, Shehzad?
I think we have many a times gone through that, right? So, I usually take a break. That's one thing which I do. I think I do a lot of writing as well, in terms of when there is a lot of work to. So, and I use a calculator to keep a focus. So, not a calculator, a stopwatch. So, 20 minutes, keep a focus, done deal, don't get distracted. I think that is something which has helped me personally. When there's massive work and to overcome, focus and channel my thoughts as well.
Right. I have a very good thing that I normally do. I just plug myself out completely and take a 15 minutes break. That's the first thing that I do. I just go around, roam around. Yes, that helps.
all
So,
right.
Noman, we
I
have
think
taken this question, by the way, while you were away.
yeah, that's great. The minute you spoke about mental health, the mental health got disbalanced for me, and I got the stress, and I was disconnected. Amin is saying signing off. I think Amin, we are also signing off. Thank you for joining, Amin. Faraz says, good to see you. Shehzad, you have another fan moment over here. So Lubna says, hi,
Lubna,
Shehzad.
how are you?
You was the one who inspired me to special in HR. No idea if he still remembers
I
me.
definitely
Hired
remember
me.
you.
Yeah, Rahim back
Yes,
finished
I
his
did
studies.
hire
Yeah,
you a long time back. I know which position and I know where I hired you in Chevron.
in Chevron. That's amazing. So I think Lubna is in Canada or US right now.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, so yeah, great guys. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you so
joining
much.
in. Quick 2 words, the last 2 cents as HR heads. What would you say? The final comments.
Mine would be, this too shall pass. So, remember the 3 stages I talked about. This is still the crisis and response mode. We'll go to a gradual reopening, and the third one will be the new norm. So pass by that phase. It's a novice, it's a first-time situation, so experience it and contribute to it.
Great, yeah. So this too shall pass, but prepare for it and
Yeah.
go through this episode again, and you would get some great insights on how to prepare. Rahim, final words.
Yeah, just a few. Take care of yourself and stay
Yeah.
safe. I think that's more important than anything else. The rest does not really matter. We have seen even in the previous pandemics also. This time too shall pass, so nothing to worry about. And it in itself will also present us with a lot more opportunities. So good luck with that, and thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the session. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rahim and Shehzad, for coming. Shehzad, I
Thank
think
you so
it's
much.
nearing midnight right now in New Zealand. So thank you for
Yeah,
being with us.
11:30,
Is
no
it?
problem. Yeah, you live in New Zealand, and it is always problem with the clock wherever you are doing the global role. So I have been through it, so no issues. Thank you. Thank you so much for your
Right.
time.
Thank you
Bye,
very
guys.
much
Bye,
for
Rain.
your time. Thank you very much, Rahim. I'll just conclude for my viewers. We spoke about reskilling. We spoke about HR being a true strategic partner to the business. We spoke about HR taking the initiative and not just waiting, and HR also challenging status quo. Go through this episode again, and you'll get a lot of insights. Also, do subscribe to our channel so you get the update as soon as we are live. We would be talking about the new face of HR in our upcoming episodes of Bizverds also, as well as we would be talking about different important, insightful, and idea generating topics. Thank you again, Shehzad. Thank you again,
Thank you.
Rahim, for
Thank
your
you.
time,
Pleasure.
and hope to see you again soon in one of the other Bizverds.
Thank you. Take care.
Absolute pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Bye, Shehzad.
Bye, Rain.
Bye, Noman.